So this video is a little bit about what it's like now and what's taught now in Bradley. And the next video, we're going to talk about pros and cons in Bradley. So the Bradley books are updated. They're updated almost every year, but from the information that I get, which is from talking to Bradley instructors and stuff, the updates are actually really kind of minor. We're talking wording, a little bit of wording updates and maybe some of the physiology birth stuff updated, but it's not a major update. And when we talk about the critiques, we'll talk about one of the reasons why a major update probably would be appropriate when it comes to Bradley. On the Bradley website, they claim that 86% of couples who take their classes have a vaginal birth without drugs. The way that my understanding is that they get the information from, and this is, again, from talking to Bradley instructors, is that Bradley sends out a survey to instructors, and instructors reply to the survey about whether or not their clients had a vaginal birth. So there's huge problems with the way that's done. It might be that the instructors underreport. One of the instructors that I spoke to said that they really don't follow people up, that what they do is if somebody sort of talks to them, then they write them down, but if somebody doesn't call them after they've had a baby, they kind of don't follow them up. So you can see, and I'm sure that some Bradley instructors do the opposite, they follow everybody up. So you can see the difference between those. Leads to statistics that perhaps are not that reliable. So who knows exactly what that kind of that number is. The other thing that Bradley talks about now is that they claim to have been instrumental in getting dads back into the delivery room. And they probably did have something to do with that. Although be aware that Bradley was very focused in America, the Bradley method was very focused in America, and at the same time, fathers made their entrance back into the delivery room in most of the Western world. So in New Zealand, and I mean, I can talk about New Zealand because I know, but also in Britain and in Europe and stuff, fathers were making their way back into the delivery room, where Bradley was perhaps not such a strong influence. So I'm sure that they had a part to play in that. Whether they were instrumental or this, one of the major reasons or not, is, something that everybody could fight about. And it is a bone of contention out there, but it's a minor one. The other thing that is talked about with Bradley is that it's generally seen as the most out-of-hospital birth-friendly childbirth classes. And I think that's because they have a great technique in terms of vaginal birth without drugs. But you do need to be aware, and if you look in the literature, you will see that Dr. Bradley didn't support out-of-hospital births. He was very strongly anti-birthing at home and very pro-birthing in a hospital, even with the concerns that he had with kind of hospital birth stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean that the person providing your classes, down the road from you with Bradley, feels the same way. And in fact, from what I know, most Bradley instructors actually feel like out-of-hospital births are fantastic and are very supportive. But it's important to know kind of what's in the literature that gets handed to people as opposed to what's talked about in class. So there can be a huge difference in there. So actually what's taught, there are 12 classes of 2 to 3 hours each. This is a classic Bradley format. And if you're teaching Bradley, one of the things you have to do is work with the Bradley format. So if your Bradley teacher is teaching anything else other than 12 classes of 2 to 3 hours each, they're not actually teaching true Bradley, which is fine. I'm not saying that they're not teaching great classes, but just that they're not teaching true Bradley classes. They might be teaching better classes, for example. Bradley has in-depth anatomy and physiology, covers woman's body and what happens in birth in great detail. And it also has the belief that the husband is the best coach if he's given the right tools, and by the right tools, they obviously mean Bradley training or something to the equivalent of, of that kind of stuff. So that's what Bradley is all about. It also has a lot of nutrition information based on the Brewer diet. And you can make a decision about the Brewer diet for yourself. Obviously, you'll go over it in some of your other classes. But the nutrition information in there is heavily based on the Brewer diet. It talks about 6 needs of labouring women, and you can read them here. Some of them are obviously going to be completely appropriate for some of your clients, but you can even see from this that some clients don't fit this kind of model. We'll talk about that again in the